Namaste. Welcome to editorial analysis of the Hindu newspaper of the day. So, the first topic is the lockdown syndrome. So, it is stressed in this article that quick recovery from the virus induced economic crisis is possible with good policies. This is stressed in this article. So, let us throw some light into this article. The country's industrial output as measured by index of industrial production IIP uh, says that the country's industrial output been contracted. So the sharp fall can largely be explained by nationwide lockdown. The manufacturing sector witnessed a contraction of about 20%, which was worst hit among the key sectors. So this is mainly due to the disruptions in labor market. So the capital goods and consumer durables witnessed roughly one-third contraction. So the capital goods and consumer durables also witnessed about contraction of one third. So, what the government must do means actual pace of recovery in industrial production and even the wider economy will depend upon the policy environment created by the government after the crisis. So, the economic rescue measures as announced, such as more loans to small and medium scale enterprises and looser credit standards, can help recovery by allowing business to find their feet soon. The key will lie in the implementation of the measures. The government must also ensure that bureaucratic red tape does not kill any nascent recovery. The government emphasis on self-reliance as its new agenda can be definitely attained if certain policies are taken. So this is all about this topic. It says that the contraction caused in the industrial production can only be achieved by uh, the policies that we take after the lockdown, and yes, there should be transparency and also accountability, and then the industrial production can be achieved as of before. So coming to the next topic, it is about this article is about critically criticality in the GST. So yes, states cannot be left to the center's mercy. This is about federalism, so cooperative federalism, and also the GST topics. Yes, it is some criticism on the GST. So let's have a look on this topic. The Maharashtra government decided to permit liquor shops to open but was quickly forced to reverse its decision in some parts following the protests. These protests were largely due to fears of crowding and consequent spread of COVID-19 rather than about alcoholism or potentially deleterious societal impact. So, why then have popularly elected governments in every state resorted to this move? Yes. So it is apparent that financially broke state governments are forced to adopt desperate and and deviled measures such as opening liquor shops to mobilize money. So this is all because of GST according to author. So GST forced the states to surrender their powers to raise resources independently through local state taxes and place them entirely at the mercy of center for most of their financial needs. So GST forced the states to surrender their powers to raise resources through local state taxes and place them entirely at the mercy of the center for most of their financial needs. Most states raise resources through a combination of their own taxes and share in the center taxes. So most states raise their resources through combination of their own taxes and a share in the center's taxes. So 70% or more of the revenue for the states come from the taxes generated within the states within their state boundary. Nearly half of these were from the sale of the goods and services within the states, and remaining from the combination of excise duties on petrol, electricity, alcohol, land registration fees, etc. So, before GST, the states were free to charge sales tax as legislated by their state legislatures. If a state has a natural disaster, they could raise additional resources for rehabilitation by raising sales tax rates on goods and also services. So, but the states sacrificed their fiscal powers in the promise of economic efficacy and tax buoyancy. So, the states are legally entitled to their share of tax revenues collected in their. అమ్మా పలక్కపోతే వదిలేయమ్మా ప్లీజ్. అలాగే అలాగే. So the states are legally entitled to their share of tax revenues collected in their state, but they are now reliant on the center to release these funds periodically. When the GST was enacted, states were guaranteed a minimum tax revenue every year for a period of 5 years. But in this, in the midset of the current pandemic, the center has reneged on both these promises. So this is a triple blow for the states: not being paid what they are owed, not being helped with additional resources, so bearing the brunt of the pandemic. So this is a triple blow for the states. The other available options thus are only the states to raise funds through taxes on sale on petroleum products, alcohol, lottery tickets, electricity, land or vehicle registration. So these are only left for states. So hence they just move to alcohol sales account for more than one third of the state tax revenues. So the states were tempted and coerced to resorting to raise of money from the people's alcohol habit. So, can't the states borrow money to tide over this crisis? So, in order to do that, they need center's approval to raise their borrowing, to raise their borrowing limit or stand as a guarantors. So, since the states do not have clear revenue visibility, the rates at which they can borrow are very high, and their ability to borrow is severely undermined. So they were once again, they just needed to be dependent on the center. So what would be in the pre-GST era means they would have had the funds raised through the sales tax to themselves, not be at the center's mercy to release funds. And second, they would have raised taxes on selected essential goods sold in their states. So, for example, mangoes, coconut oil, etc., in accordance with their own state legislatures' norms. Yes. So, just as it is clear that COVID-19 has to fought in decentralized manner at local level. So, the idea of cooperative federalism began to be ruined. If if the center financial obligations to the states wouldn't be fulfilled. So, in this critical juncture, the central should come into the help of the states and to raise their revenue. And so, the next topic for the editorials is one for the poor. It is about the relief being given to the migrants. Yes, food grains will offer immediate relief, but workers need more substantive measures. So, what is in this article? Let us see. So, a major economic crisis for the urban poor in general and migrant labor in particular. Yes, this is one. With loss of livelihoods, they have been pushed into the penury in their workplaces, and within the lockdown, and with the lockdown initially preventing interstate travel, many have embarked journeys to their native places to get support at a time of acute distress. In the second series of measures that are part of 20 lakh crore economic package, the finance ministry tried to address the needs of these sections apart from small farmers. The ministry recognized that migrant workers have to be taken to the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. Yes, this remains as a lifesaver for poor people dependent on fragile livelihoods, and this decision is to extend it to the monsoon season is a welcome step. Yes, the government should also ensure wages are paid without delays. It is now up to state governments to ensure the scheme and implement it properly. And implementation is a key for any scheme. Yes, for migrants who are still stationed in their places of work and who are not beneficiaries of National Food Security Act or any state schemes in their place of work, the Finance Ministry promised 5 kgs of food grains per person and 1 kg of pulses per household per month for 2 months. This will bring the number of people receiving subsidized food grain close to the legal requirements of the Act National Food Security Act, which is 67% of the population. The government could have extended the public distribution system coverage to include more people who are suffering from loss of jobs, livelihoods, besides the migrant workers. The One Nation One Ration Card scheme will allow migrants access any fair price shop across the country will be implemented by March 2021. But this scheme, as implemented now, has been utilized only sparingly by migrants. Many of the announcements, including one for small farmers or a combination of liquidity and credit easing measures or the extinction of the previous schemes which are already existing schemes. So, announcement of schemes and implementation of those announced schemes is need of the hour to protect poor and migrants in particular. And this is all this topic. Coming to the next topic, which is very important now, and this is about the labor laws that are being, I mean, some state governments are easing these labor laws, and this topic is about that one. Yes, let's start. Workers are being abandoned by the employers and above all by the states. So yes, the workers' right to home was curbed using Disaster Management Act 2005. They started working back home. Many died on the way. The center orders permitting their return to home recently. So Shramik special trains were introduced and many were sent to their homes. Yes. So many state governments are trying to ease these labor laws. So Uttar Pradesh government issued an ordinance keeping in the abeyance almost all labor statutes, including the laws of maternity benefits, gratuity, Factories Act 1948, Minimum Wages Act 1948, Industrial Establishment Act 1946, the Trade Unions Act 1926. These are all eased by the Uttar Pradesh state government. The Confederation of Indian Industry (CII) suggested 12-hour work shifts that go there and that governments issue directions to make workers join duties. Yes. So, this what this then means about abandonment of the unorganized workers. Now, the employers want state to introduce laissez-faire and a system of indenture for the organized workers too. Means the state should not involve in the uh, in the industries. This will take away the protection conferred on organized labor by Parliament. Yes. So, what is the past? The past of these barbaric exploitations? Yes, Bengal Regulations 7, 1819. This is for the British planters in Assam tea estates. The workers had to work under a 5-year contract and desertion was made permissible. And the next act, Transport of Native Labours. Act 1863. This is passed in Bengal, strengthened the control of employers, even enabled them to detain laborers in the district of employment and imprison them up to 6 months. So, the Bengal Act 6, 1865, later passed to deploy special immigration police to prevent laborers from leaving and return them to plantation after their detention. These were things. And the Factories Act 1911 was introduced, which introduced 12 hours work shifts. Yet the low wages, arbitrary wage cuts, all put them the laborers to the debt slavery. Yes, the labor laws in India were emerged out of workers' struggles. Britain was forced to appoint Royal Commission on Labour, which was reported in 1935. The Government of India Act 1935 enabled the government and enabled greater representation of Indians in lawmaking, resulted in reforms which are the forerunners of the present labor enactments. So, indentured plantation labor saw relief in the form of Plantation Labor Act 1951 after the independence. So, what is needed is dignity through democracy. The Factories Act 1948 laid down 8 hours work shifts uh, with overtime wages, weekly off leaves with wages, and measures for health, hygiene, and safety. The Industries Disputes Act provide for workers' participation to resolve wage and other disputes through negotiations, so that strikes, lockouts, etc., and also dismissals, all these can be avoided. Yes, the Minimum Wages Act ensures wages below which it is not possible to subsist. The directive principles of state policy and right to life and the right against exploitations under Article 21 and 23 of the Constitution also helped workers to retain their dignity. Trade unions have played critical role in transforming the life of a worker. Yes, the Supreme Court in Glasgow Laboratories versus Presiding Officer Labour 1983 judgment set about Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act 1946. In the days of laissez-faire, when industrial relations was governed by a harsh overweight law of hire and fire, the management was the supreme master, the relationship being referable to contract between unequals. Yes, the developing notions for social justice and expanding horizon of social economic justice necessitated statutory protection to the unequal partner, those who invest blood and flesh for the capital. Yes, the movement was from status to contract, the contract being not left to be negotiated by two unequal persons but statutorily imposed. Yes, the movement was from status to contract, the contract being not left to be negotiated by two unequal persons but statutorily imposed. Yes, it's not just negotiation but it is imposed statutorily. The Section 5 of the Factories Act empowers state governments to exempt only in case of public emergency. So, under this section, now the state governments are taking advantage of Factories Act, Section 5 of the Factories Act, which empowers the state governments to exempt only in the case of public emergency, which was explained as a grave emergency whereby the security of India or any part of the territory thereof is in threat, that is by war, external aggression, or internal disturbance. The Section 36B of the Industrial Disputes Act enables exemptions for government industry only if provisions exist for investigations and settlements. So these sections are taken as advantage by the state governments, and thereby they are imposing the harsh labor laws. So, yes, the orders of the state governments therefore lack statutory support. The labor is a concurrent subject. It is not on the state list nor in the union list. It is a concurrent list. So, both center and state can make laws on the subject of the labor. Um, so, and most pieces of the labor legislations are central enactments. The Constitution does not envisage approval by the President of the of a state ordinance, which makes a whole slew of laws enacted by Parliament inoperable in absence of corresponding legislations on the same subject. Yes, what is here is the Constitution does not envisage the approval by the President of a state ordinance, so which makes the laws enacted by the parliament inoperable in the absence of corresponding legislation on the same subject. Yes, but in Life Insurance Corporation versus Bahadur and others case, the Supreme Court highlighted that any changes in the conditions of service can only through democratic process of negotiations and or legislation. Rejecting the central government's attempt to unilateral deny of bonus, the court said fundamental errors can be avoided only by remembering the fundamental values. Yes, the orders and ordinance issued by the state governments are undemocratic and unconstitutional. The existing conditions of labors will have to be continued. So, yes, governments have a constitutional duty to ensure just humane conditions of work and maternity benefits. The health and strength of the workers cannot be abused by the force of economic necessity. Labor laws are thus civilizational goals and cannot be trumped on the excuse of a pandemic. Yes, this is all about this article. So, the next and the last topic of the day is keeping Asia Pacific afloat. The marine environment in the region is getting strained. So, this is about the marine pollution and most particularly the plastic pollution. So, let's discuss the topic. So, the seas provide food, livelihoods, and a sense of identity, especially for coastal communities in the Pacific Island states. Sadly, escalating strains on the marine environment are threatening to drown progress and our way of life. Climate change and unsustainable resource management have degraded ecosystems and diminished the biodiversity. So, yes, overfishing have exponentially increased, leaving fish stocks and food systems vulnerable. Marine plastic pollution tributed Marine plastic pollution contributed to most of the debris flooding in the ocean. So, changing sails, acceleration, accelerating regional actions for sustainable oceans in Asia and Pacific. The theme study of Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific. So, is ESCAP, Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, theme study changing sails, accelerating regional actions for sustainable oceans in Asia and Pacific reveal that without data, we are swimming in the dark. Data are available for only 2 out of the 10 targets for Sustainable Development Goal 14, that is life below water. So, yes, only out of the 10 targets of Goal 14, that is life below water, only for 2 targets the data is available. The images of the plastic pollution have become a commonplace. Asia and the Pacific produces nearly half of global plastic by volume, of which it consumes 38%. Plastic represents a double burden for the ocean. Their production generates carbon dioxide absorbed by the ocean, because oceans are the greatest sink of the carbon dioxide. So their production, which produces highest of the carbon dioxide, is absorbed by the ocean, and as a final product enters the ocean as a pollution. The plastic is a major marine pollutant. Yes, environmental decline is affecting the fish livestock. Yes, over exploitation of the fish has become common. Fishing, fighting illicit fishing activity and conserving marine areas must remain a priority. So, there should also work with the shipping community to navigate toward green shipping. Enforcing sustainable shipping policies is also essential. Next, transboundary ocean management and linking ocean data call for close cooperation among countries in the region. Harnessing water statistics through strong national statistical systems serve as a compass guiding countries to monitor trends, devise timely responses. So, countries should be equipped and all ocean custodians to localize global agreements in tangible results. Yes, keeping the ocean plastic free will depend on policies that promotes a circular economy approach. This minimizes resource use and will require economic incentives and disincentives. Yes, the ahead is to steer our collective fleets towards the sustainable oceans. So to decrease the pollution in the ocean, so first plastic pollution should be addressed, over exploitation of the fishes should be addressed, and also next, the there should be communication with the sailors, that is towards the green shipping, so and enforcing the sustainable shipping policies, and also the country should act in cooperation, linking ocean data. Transboundary boundary of the ocean management and linking ocean data will also help, and also national policies and rethinking the production cycles should be the need of the hour to address the ocean pollution and keep Asia Pacific afloat. And yes, data should be known for all the targets of the sustainable development goal, life below water, to address the issues correctly, and uh, formulate the correct policies. Yes, and this is all for today's editorial of the Hindu newspaper, and thank you.